Hello, my name is Richard Conley. I'm the Director of Sales Engineering here at Cyware, and today we're going to cover how to follow an incident from Cyware Orchestrate through Cyware Respond. When you first click into Cyware Orchestrate, one of the first things you're going to be greeted by is the analytic dashboard. This dashboard is going to contain metrics that are specific to actions taken within the orchestration platform. So things like playbook execution time, playbooks that have been used and how many times they have been used, the time on average, the frequency of use instances. All of these are items or metrics that are going to be collected, generated, and then popped onto the dashboard for your review. One of the most important pieces of any orchestration platform are going to be the integrations and how it integrates within your security stack as it stands today. If we click on apps and navigate into the App Store, you're going to see over 381 integrated apps that align to industry standard cybersecurity tools. Those tools are going to serve four purposes for our tool, our orchestration tool. Purpose number one is going to be alert generation. Orchestration tools don't typically sit off of a tap or a span port. They don't typically distribute agents in the environment. We don't do advanced correlation on data lakes or anything like that. What we do is rely on the alerts from the tools you currently already have deployed in your environment. So if you, for instance, are a Splunk customer, we would integrate with your Splunk, either Splunk or Splunk Enterprise Security, and we would then take the alerts from Splunk and use those as triggers for playbooks. Same thing goes for tools like CrowdStrike, Falcon, for instance, just to name a few. Obviously, we integrate with many of the industry standard tools, but these are just some examples on how we can take those alerts and use them as trigger points. Purpose number two is going to be external ILC enrichment. Now, ILCs come in many flavors, right? So things like IP addresses, file hashes, usernames, domain names, all these things can typically be tested against an external source, like an external tip. Those are typically either free or paid feeds. For free, you can tap into things like VirusTotal, Alien Vault OTX, Shodan. For pay feeds, you can tap into things like Recorded Future. Sometimes you can pay for different tiers of MISP and other services. But ultimately, you would be able to pull that information up, review it, and see if those ILCs are good, if they are malicious, suspicious, or unknown. And using that determination will allow for you to make decisions programmatically through the workflow. You also need to test internal ILCs, and that's going to be our third purpose. Those internal ILCs are typically tested using something like Active Directory, where you can go and grab a user, which wouldn't be relevant for an external threat intel feed, but is incredibly relevant for your investigation. And you'll be able to see all the details about that user, who their manager is, anything that's stored in Active Directory. You can do the same thing for network traffic on firewalls. We have obviously all of the big players, guys like Palo Alto, via Panorama or direct firewall connections, as well as a plethora of Cisco tools, to name a few. But we're able to take that detail and then enrich it, get some information about that internal host, about that internal endpoint, about that internal IP address, about that internal user, and all that information is going to be incredibly relevant for your investigation as we move forward. The fourth purpose, of course, is going to be enforcement. Now, this is one I don't typically get to see on proof of concept or during demos, because people don't want us using test software to impact their production environments. However, if you want to, you can actually jump in and do whatever you want. Let's take CrowdStrike as an example. CrowdStrike Falcon has quite a few actions that are around enrichment and alert generation, but it also does support some actions that are around the capability of response. So as we scroll down here, one that catches my eye is contain a host. Using contain a host, we're actually able to sort of isolate the host on the network using the agent on the CrowdStrike Falcon tool. We do have integrations to stuff like Cisco ISC to truly isolate by network, integrations to multi-factor authentication tools like Duo to go and bounce people's sessions, or Okta to go and reset someone's sessions, or force re-authentication through MFA. These are all actions that typically take place at the end of the threat response lifecycle and give you the ability to fully automate that, right? So again, just to cover those four phases, we're going to want to make sure we get the alert generated by a tool. After that, we're going to want to do external ILC enrichment. Then we're going to want to do internal ILC enrichment, and we're going to want to follow that up with a response, something that an analyst would typically do inside of that cycle. All of that's, of course, made available to you through access to these apps. And as I stated, we support many of the industry standards today. In order to get the alerts to appear in our system, we use webhook, and we use a combination of triggered events and webhook in order to pull that information in. So once we get a triggered event in, it flows into the tool and it creates a sort of a package of key value pairs. Like most alerting technologies are going to send the data over in JSON format, which is just a combination of key value pairs. As you can see here, we have a raw alert displayed. If you were to go ahead and click the table view, you would get a cleaner view of that alert as well, and the ability to actually click in and copy any of these items. This is really helpful when it comes to understanding the file paths that are the paths that go directly to an individual object that you're looking for your playbook building process. So if you need this value, like being able to click and copy this value directly out is really helpful. Once the event is sent to the system, it will trigger a response by playbook. And I'm going to show you a couple playbooks here. One thing I'm going to do here as well is switch between tenants. So if you're a multi-tenant environment or you just like to make sure all your toys are in their correct buckets, you can actually have a multi-tenancy setup. And you'll see here we're under development. I'm going to go from development to the demo branch, and that's going to change the overall look and feel of the tool. It's also going to only give me the content that's inside that tenant. Here we're looking at a master playbook and a sub playbook. We do support the capability of sub playbooks. This gives you the ability to take a repeatable action like analyze said malware, right? In this case, detect, analyze, and action on malicious software. This allows for you to say, hey, we have something that's malicious. We're going to use this sub playbook every single time, but we don't want to have to keep rewriting it. So saving it as a sub playbook allows for you to use it in that way. Let's go ahead and click into the master. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to show you the canvas as well as a couple action nodes. When it comes to building the playbook out, you have a couple general details around the playbook that you can build out on the right side. On the left side, you're going to have nodes. Now, these nodes are going to be built up of actions, conditions, inputs, or storages. And each one kind of repeats itself. You'll see it has like a regular node, it has a custom node, and I'm going to walk through and explain each one. Under actions, the app node is exactly what it sounds like. It links up to the apps that you've already turned on in the tool. Since we've been using CrowdStrike as an example, let's go ahead and pull that up again. You'll see CrowdStrike Falcon here, and if we go ahead and expand that out, you'll see all the available actions that are here, including our container host, which we just explained. If you were to go ahead and click this, it's going to ask you for some details. Obviously, you're going to want to map the input data, like host ID, to an object that either came before it or came from the triggered event. So grabbing that host ID, putting it in here will allow us to orchestrate the activity between Cyware and CrowdStrike and all the other tools you have mapped in, which is really particularly helpful. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this here and delete this step to clean up the canvas. Now, custom will allow for you to go and build it in a custom IDE. We do support Python scripting, and all of the scripts you do write can be saved so that they're reusable scripts within the tool, giving you the capability to write a script one time and use it numerous times if it's something that you find is necessary. While we do pride ourselves on having a lot of the actions out of the box, we do support data transformation within the tool, which is kind of one of the primary use cases for using custom scripts. If you wanted to write that, we didn't want to take that capability away from you and put that in and make the tool a bit more black box. Wanted to make sure you had the ability to go through and customize as you like. As you can see, we have the sub playbook node here, giving us the ability to click and drag that over and put a sub playbook on the canvas. I won't do that because we do already actually have a sub playbook listed here. If we were to scroll down and scroll over a bit. We also have our conditional nodes. Now, these are sort of the left-hand, right-hand side logic nodes. If I click and drag this over, you'll see we have the ability to say, yes or no. And if yes, then do the following thing. If no, do something else. That's sort of a really basic use case for a conditional node. They can be very complex. You can have several different options or objects come out of this, and you can either do it manually by feeding in one of these follow-up nodes, like an input node, where you'll say something like, hey, option 1 is yes, option 2 is no, and then you can connect the two. And then based on the input from the user, we can go ahead and do it. These are called gating tasks. You would typically do this if you wanted to, say, quarantine an endpoint. You don't want to do that automatically. You want an analyst to look at it and say, yeah, I think we should quarantine it. So they'll click yes, submit that. It'll be recorded within an auditing of the tool, and that information will then flow straight through to the conditional node, which will then automatically take the action that you've set forth. We also have storage nodes. Memory sort of works like short-term memory, allowing you to store objects or items in this node. So if you have a key value pair that you want to always call up, like a ticket name or maybe an instance name, if you're using a multi-instance version of a tool, you're able to go ahead and store that there. Persistent list is exactly as it sounds. This is something that's more prevalent throughout the entire tool, not just this incident. So this is like long-term memory. So if you have a persistent list of internal IP addresses that are hosting PII, and you want to make sure you keep an eye on them, and you always want to check, is this a PII server that's affected? Then the persistent list is a great use case for that. As you can see, we've done some fetching of the original detection IDs, and then we're going to move right into a sub workflow. This is pretty common when you build out monolithic playbooks, kind of like a SIM playbook, SIM alert triage, and underneath that you break off into all the different alerts that can flow off of a SIM. This is pretty typical. If I go ahead and click open playbook here, it's going to go ahead and extract and open up a playbook. This is the sub playbook that we saw earlier when we were looking at and reviewing the playbook screen. We're going to go ahead and get the detection from CrowdStrike. We're going to create an incident in our respond tool. We're going to list out all devices, and we're going to start to build the host information, which is really necessary in the response tool, which is something I'll be showing you in just a moment. As you can see here, we have a conditional task, which is going to go out and build off additional data. It's basically going to see, hey, does this host already exist in our tool? One thing about the Cyware Respond tool is that it actually has the capability of hosting its own CMDB. So with that being the case, we want to make sure that we're not creating duplicate hosts. So if we identify a host, we'll go ahead and just update it. If we don't identify a host, we'll create it using these workflows. After doing so, we'll connect any necessary dots, which is a concept that is really popular and prevalent within that response tool. We'll do any enrichment of that external ILC, and then we're going to basically step through and populate our incident. In this case, we left the response capability out because we didn't want to automatically block or quarantine anything, but we did want to get everything staged so that our analysts can handle this in the next phase. Now, if you want to get an idea of what these playbooks look like when they run, I can actually step back into the playbook area, and you can review the run logs of any playbook that has been executed within the tool. I'm going to go ahead and review a previous run here. And viewing the run details, you're going to see on the left-hand side of the screen the playbook you're reviewing. On the right-hand side of the screen, the executions that have went through. Clicking into any one of these areas, like check host, will expose the information that was sent as inputs and the information that was received as outputs. Is this system there? Yes, it was. We received the value of true. You can again navigate between JSON view or table view to make it easier for yourself. And you'll see that we have the same endpoint here. And the endpoint is one that we're going to want to review. You can check through and see all the steps, and you'll get the outputs of each step as it flows through the tool. So if you look at the virus total step, for instance, you can see we checked the file hash, and that file hash results have been listed here. Again, able to be reviewed in table view if that looks a bit more clear for you. And you can see all of the results as they've come through the tool. And mapping to each one of these individual ones gives you the ability to say, well, did we receive a malicious verdict? Iterate over that. Yes, we did. Okay, we'll move down the malicious chain. All of that capability is here within the tool. Now, after an incident is processed here, it's going to flow out and into our incident response tool, Cyware Response. Now I'd like to take a moment to cover Cyware Response. We're going to go ahead and follow the incident that we created in Cyware Orchestrate on the previous chapter, and we're going to step through this flow. When you come into Cyware Respond, one of the first things that you're going to see is a dashboard. And the dashboard is going to display metrics that are really important and related to incident response. Now, this is very similar to Cyware Orchestrate and the other Cyware platforms. However, when it comes to incident response, I find the dashboards to be particularly intriguing. They're going to show you things like open incidents, closed incidents, open action, closed actions, unassigned incidents, just to name a few, incidents that are open by phase, by severity, by type. All of these things are incredibly valuable when it comes to the analysts reviewing their work and reviewing the function and the capabilities of their team, as well as the manager reviewing that information. All of this information can be, of course, presented as a report, or it can be viewed as a dashboard. Dashboards are highly customizable in this tool. You have the ability to come in and create a custom dashboard. For our demo's sake, we'll just go ahead and name this one Demo. And as you can see, you can select predefined layouts, or you can create your own custom layouts. And you can also decide whether you want the dashboard to be static or rotating. Now, a static dashboard is only going to show the details of the dashboard that you've built out, all the widgets. It'll refresh, but it won't change the details of them. It'll always show you open incidents, close incidents, open action, close action, so on. If you choose a rotating dashboard, however, you can have numerous metrics flow through. So as opposed to just looking at open and close incidents, maybe you get to look at open and close times or cost savings, any other metrics that you find valuable. If we go ahead and click create, you'll see that this is going to create a blank slate and give you the ability to build out the widgets according to the layout you selected. Since I chose a predefined one, we have this sort of overview widget section as well as the informational section. Clicking plus on any of these will allow for you to choose any widgets from the widget library and pull that back into the tool. You can view those widgets, you can make decisions about how you want them to appear on the page, so on and so forth. Once you're done, you save, and then you would have that dashboard appear here along the top. You can choose to mark that dashboard as your own dashboard, or you can choose to use it as a default dashboard. You can share the dashboard out with everyone else in the business unit. It's totally up to you. Now let's go into the incident that was created as a result of our previous work. If we click into incidents, we're going to see the incident CS ransomware with the machine name, which we all recognize from the previous section. And if I go ahead and click into it, you're going to see the details that were populated in by the orchestration tool, as well as any details we choose to add from the incident response tool. Now, response is on the left-hand side. It's going to walk through the incident phases. Out of the box, we come with the NIST cybersecurity framework and a few others, sans CSF to name a few. However, you can create whatever incident response process you think is best. So if you choose to have a mix between the two, or you prefer pickerel, you can actually go through and create your own phases, which is something I'll show you in just a moment. But for this incident, we just mapped it straight to the NIST cybersecurity framework. As you can see here, we have the summary page, which is going to show us all the details of the phases that are going to come up, as well as some incident-related details around playbook executions, open actions, so on and so forth. This is sort of the first place the analyst gets to start making some decisions about where they move. Now, you can navigate by clicking on the widgets above, or you can go into the left-hand side, which I'm going to do. If I click preparation, you'll see relevant details and fields that tie to preparation details. These details were again automatically populated by the orchestration tool and dropped directly in here for our review. If we go to detection, you'll see detection related items. And there's something I want to point out on this screen. You'll see up top that this is following a non-linear flow. When you come into the tool and you build these individual frameworks, you have the capability of choosing non-linear flow or linear flow. Linear flow means you cannot skip the phases. You have to go through them in order, from preparation to detection to containment, so on and so forth. However, in a non-linear scenario, you can say, well, we've ran through detection. We've determined that this is just a false positive. So I want to go ahead and change the phase to closure, allowing you to skip the remaining phases without having to put any details in or having any sort of authorization chain you have to go through in order to close the incident out. This will allow for you to move fluidly through the incident. Just choose which one works best for your incident response process. You'll see here we have containment details, investigation eradication details, remediation details, so on and so forth, all the way to closure. Now, moving down the left-hand side of the screen, we're going to come to mission control. This acts sort of like an analyst workbench. You're going to have a lot of things you can do in this area. As you can see, I've already started populating notes. I'm working on this with Jyoti, who has already dropped some incident details as well. So it's a team of incident responders working together on the same ticket. If I come in and I say, thanks for your assistance, this information will be dropped and marked in the case. Any notes marked in the case are recorded in non-repudiated fashion within the activity logs, which is sort of an audit logging area that's in the analyst workbench area under mission control. You'll see here that I just added a note. It has a timestamp. This is something I can't edit. It's not mutable. I can't change it. So anything that I do against the case is going to be recorded. This is super important, especially if you need to present in the court of law, if you need to go to take this to in front of a judge or any legal proceedings. Having this type of recording is super important. If we go to terminal, this is one of my favorite features. You have the capability of actually stepping in, selecting an application of your choice. I like to use VirusTotal for my examples. I'm just going to use our V3 instance. And you can do things like come in and do a quick IP search. So maybe you don't need to execute an entire playbook and you just want to drop in an IP address. Note that it's auto-filling for me the information that's relevant. If I wanted to go ahead and launch this against 8.8.8.8, I can go ahead and do so and then run this. Within a couple minutes, it'll come back with an example, or a couple seconds, depending on the integration. It'll come back with a full list of all of the information that was sent and that came back in from as a result of this API call. So we're basically reaching out to VirusTotal and we're saying, hey, look into this for me, look up this IP address, find the following information, right? And that will allow for you to go ahead and execute, which is pretty neat. The timeline gives you the timeline that it takes for an incident to move between phases. So as it went from preparation to identification, from identification to detection to investigation and eradication, all of that's recorded within the timeline. So you get an idea of how long it's taking for you or your team or your analyst to actually move through an investigation. The timeline gives you a really clean snapshot of that information, and of course, can be produced as a report as well. The connect the dot feature is going to give you all of the details around things that are related to this incident. Now, this is particularly unique, and I want to take some time to cover this as it is a key differentiator for Cyware Respond. As you can see, we've mapped into campaigns, threat actors. The threat actor in this case is TA505, otherwise known as Hive 0065. We have the malware that's related in this case, as well as the device that's related. And all of this information has been connected to this incident automatically through the connect the dots command that we sent over from the orchestration platform. You can also manually add things if you choose to. Any things that are available to connect, you can actually go ahead and add in any applications that are relevant, things that maybe weren't called automatically, but you are aware of. You can actually add in through the available to connect area. This information is going to be a combination of the connect the dots data and the threat intel data. As you can see, there's a lot of information coming across that relates to this particular incident. Because as soon as we discovered it was tied to that move it vulnerability and that clop malware, we immediately unlocked a plethora of details that were related to it. So you can see the IP addresses that we've seen in previous incidents, URLs, email addresses, SHA-256 file hashes. All of that's present here. If we come to the incident visualizer, you'll get a visual image of that. Now you can see it zoomed quite a bit out. Not a problem. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And as you can see, this is the incident that we're working with. It's tied to the Move It campaign. It's tied to the clop malware. It's tied to this individual device, right? It's tied to this threat acting group. If we were to click on that, you get some details around it, including other relations that are tied to it, whether or not it's still marked as active in your system. All of that relevant information is present here. We support hierarchical view as well as organic view. We do give you the ability to group and ungroup, but all of the information that pertains to this incident is here, from the file hashes to the IP addresses, all relevant details and data present here. And this is a visualization that you can form in any way you like. You can click and drag, move the icons around, and produce this as a threat bulletin, sort of add-on, just an image to help paint the picture of what's going on with this incident and what's going on with this investigation. All of that information is present within this one screen, which I think is really powerful. Any incidents that can be merged, you can actually step in and either manually merge them or you can merge them using the merge incidents command within the orchestrate platform. It'll go through, look for commonalities between the case, the host, the malware involved, the threat actor. And if there's too many similarities based on the similarity percentage, it'll go ahead and merge those two cases together for you, or you can manually do it here. If you click into attachments, you'll see we've separated these out. Typically, you have attachments within case management, but we chose to go the route where you have an artifact, evidence, and others. The reason is these are kind of different things, and most of the tools like this sort of bundle them together. But case artifacts are things like, a PCAP of a case, something that's going to be reviewed by a networking person, right? Maybe any details that cover sort of the trail that this individual attacker took to get into your environment, or this individual malware took to infect your environment. It's all recorded under artifacts. You can be uploaded, dragged, and dropped from your desktop or anything like that. If you have evidence like screenshots, things that are like the smoking gun, something like multiple failed logins followed by a successful login isn't necessarily bad, but when you combine it with all the different elements here, It looks like a brute force attempt, brute force success, followed up by a malware infestation and other items. Now all of a sudden you have evidence, you have a chain. So producing that information and dropping it into the evidence area lets us know what's important. The artifacts is everything that's related. The evidence is everything that's important. Others can just be individual data that you want to drop in. Maybe there's an email exchange that took place that was related to this or some other file you want to add. Actions is our task library. It gives you the ability to create and assign tasks directly from the incident. So let's say we had two teams here. We went through and we cleaned up this ransomware. We got rid of the clock piece. One thing we're going to want to do is reimage the host. So reimage host. And we can go ahead and drop a description of what needs to be done, although most of your desktop technicians are already going to know. You can assign a person, a priority, set the action type. This is going to be corrective, and we can submit that. That action will then be recorded and set, ready to roll from here. The person who was assigned will receive a notification. They'll come in, take care of the action, mark it as complete, and then you'll have a chain of all those actions that have been completed within the tool. The playbook area maps directly back to Cyware Orchestrate, giving you the ability to launch playbooks that exist within Orchestrate. As you can see, there aren't any that seem terribly related to this one, but if I go ahead and click playbooks and I choose all, you can see all of the relevant ones. So let's say I just needed to quickly look up ILCs using our Intel Exchange platform. I'm able to launch this, enter the ILCs, let's say file hash, username, something like that, and hit enter. It's going to go ahead and run that playbook and then produce the run log here and attach it to the case, giving me even more details and more information about this investigation. The knowledge base is where you can store sort of incident response plans and other details that will help the analyst navigate through the incident. So in this case, we have attached the ransomware response plan. If we click into it, you'll see all the details that are associated with that. So, here's how we minimize exposure and maximize backup, tap into insurance expertise, so on and so forth. Now, this is super relevant. You can see when it was produced and all the other information that is relevant for it. But it can help a young analyst or a junior analyst make their way through the investigation in accordance to your incident response workflow. Naturally, they're going to follow it because they have to, because it's prescribed within the tool and prescribed through the orchestration and the automation. But this gives them further detail as to what they're doing and how they're working on it. The miscellaneous area gives you the ability to produce enhancements. These are typically things like policy updates. Perhaps someone enters let's say they use their own credentials as a service account for a network device and they change their password. Now it's multiple fail logins and it locks them out. A good enhancement would be a policy change. So we would come in here, we hit plus, we would do an enhancement type of a new policy change. And we would say no one can use their own individual logins for service accounts. You have to create a system account and use the system account so that in the event you change your password, you don't blow the system up, right? That's one of those things you can actually make a suggestion of a change. These can be either suggestions for the incident response workflow or enhancements for policy or whatever you choose to use it for. PIRs are just priority intel requests, which can be submitted. Cost tracking is available as well. So we manage cost per incident. This is a metric that most managers find really interesting. So you're able to see how long people were spent on something as it moves through and calculates the actions that are taken. It's going to say, hey, this incident would have cost you X amount of money if you didn't have this tool, or with this tool, this is how much the incident costs. We would really want to look into remediation steps that are prior or previous to this alert ever happening, right? Maybe more education around ransomware and how it's delivered will keep anyone from ever having to do this again, which means my analyst time, which is being calculated into the cost, by the way, is not wasted, right? Things like time tracking as well, which we saw through the timeline under mission control, but the ability to see how long someone's been working on an incident and how long it took to complete it is particularly important as well. Now, these are all the details of an incident that has already flown through. Well, we talked about your ability to customize them, and I want to show that to you briefly. I'm going to go ahead and click into Form Management under the Admin panel. I'm going to go to Incident. Now, remember I said we were navigating inside of an NIST incident, and you can create all sorts of kinds. Again, they can be really specific, like ransomware incident or new network item detected incident, or they can be more general, like an entire workflow. For example, I'm just going to go ahead and edit the NIST workflow that exists. As you can see here, we have the default phase of preparation. It has all the details within this phase. Even though it's a default phase, you can add new fields to the area. However, this phase is required for all incidents. They all have preparation no matter what incident response workflow you're using. It allows for you to get all of the system-related information, locations impacted, the incident date, the timestamp, the severity, things that are relevant for like general incident management information. After that, you break into your own unique phases. Now, under phases here is where you can get really creative. Nothing that's here is permanent. All of the items you see here graphically are represented by GUIDs on the back end, which are accessible by our API. So, as you see, detection summary, source IP, destination IP, all of this information can be automatically populated by the orchestration tool by referencing the GUID and passing in a key value pair, which will automatically populate out a value. Now, let's say you didn't have a field here that you needed. You're actually able to go over here and click New Field. And here you can create a new field. You can, of course, select one from our pre-existing field library here as well, right? We have numerous fields already created. But if you wanted to, you can go ahead and click New Field. And when you select field type, here I want you to focus on the bottom right of the screen. And I choose single select, you'll see that the whole thing dynamically changes. It changes depending on the type of field you're working with. Some things are relevant for fields that are not relevant for others. So in this case, you're able to go ahead and drop in options. Something typical would be like yes, and there may be an option for no. Since it's a single select, the user will only be able to select one of these two options, and that will allow for you to move forward through your phases within your incident response. You can choose whether it's mandatory or one-time entry field, so on and so forth. Lots of details can be populated, including a helper text. So if you wanted to make this as easy as possible to use for your newer analyst or anyone who just came on board, this is going to be really, really helpful to build out for them and get fleshed out. Again, lots of out-of-the-box content. However, if you want to create custom fields, we do support the capability to do so. As you can see, you have the ability to add additional phases as well. In this case, we just have detection, contamination, containment, and investigation and eradication. All of those are relevant and present here. Each one has their own unique items that are populated according to NIST, and all of that information is broken out into these individual phases. If you have custom tabs like phishing, triage, or additional details, you can create your own tabs and fill them up with all the fields you think are necessary for that particular type of data. This gives you an unlimited amount of flexibility. Let's talk about why that's important. If you are using case management tools like ServiceNow or Jira, you likely have a person or a team, or maybe even professional services that are wrapped around your ability to function, right? If I need to add a field to my case or incident response workflow, I need to add it now because there could be an ongoing investigation that this field is relevant for. Having the flexibility to do so and be an administrator of this tool and making it easy and simple enough for me to manage is really, really one of the strong suits of the Cyware Respond platform. So I'm going to go ahead and show one last item that I think is particularly important. And this is how we map all of this data into the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This is something that's prevalent throughout Cyware. We make sure we manage and map to MITRE in every way, shape, and form that's possible within a given tool. Under Analyst Workbench, you'll see the Attack Navigator. One thing you might notice right up front is, other than the, obviously the widgets that are up top giving you some really relevant information, is going to be the colors. This is because I went ahead and activated the heat map prior to our demo, which is going to go ahead and show you all of these things as they map to your specific incidents. So it's not just MITRE theoretical, right, where we just give you details about the library, but it's showing you in red. It's red because there's a lot that's related to it. We have 52 incidents in this instance, so my instance, that are related specifically to brute force. And of those 52 incidents, we have 1 indicator exposed and 11 threat actors. If you want some more detail, you can come under relations and see exactly who and what. You can see which incidents are related, which threat actors are related, and all the other details that are present. You're able to click through, add actions. You can even see things like a network diagram, which is going to kind of explode. There we go. A network diagram, which is relevant for you if you wanted to come through and view additional details. So we give you quite a bit of flexibility in how we map to the Attack Navigator, and we make the Attack Navigator, something that's really concrete. It's typically more theoretical and how you're going to deploy it, but here we're mapping it to your incidents in your environment and making it incredibly relevant for you. So this has been a demonstration showing how we can not only set up, configure, and deploy Cyware Orchestrate and Respond, but how they both will work within an environment and handle a single incident from start to finish. Thank you for your time.